By bandwidth, yeah.
By bandwidth. But it seems to me you also said 75 gig per second of Tor bandwidth.
Right.
Seems like a lot of stuff going on. With
Well, most of those are people going to like ordinary websites.
Right. Right. Yeah. But I guess as somebody who's spent a lot of time with marketers, I saw your charts going like this. You have these sticks and programs. So
Yeah, everything's a hockey stick.
right. But thinking, well, gee, something's cooking here, and maybe it's 5% of the overall traffic. That means sites. Some percentage of people don't want to. They can't use a straight connection to things like Facebook in different parts of the world. To understand the landscape here, trying to get a handle about this landscape. I wonder if you thought about it a lot and working it day to day. Are imagining what will happen in the future. Are onion sites going to proliferate more? There'll be a lot more onion sites. Will somebody setting up a company generally first shut themselves down on the internet and then slowly open themselves up? In other words, what's the it's kind of my question that you heard before. What's the cost of this, and what am I out if I don't do this?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm not an economic business forecaster person,
right.
but I mean, in my second slide there, I said that I think that this technology is roughly where the vanilla stuff that just does encryption for websites was a decade and a half ago. And I think for the reasons I outlined, it's important to have these sorts of security. Now, I didn't have time to go into it, but what I would like is that this is easy and fast and automatic for somebody to set up. There's a new certificate authority that's just had a beta called Let's Encrypt that is designed to allow fast, free, automatic setting up of a TLS certificate for people. In the long run, I'd love to have things set up so that you just automatically get a .onion address to them as well. And yeah, how that's going to go, I can't say. But as I said, one of the main things is that you're still going to have registered domain names that are out there, but by binding it in this way, you get all the protections of the onion sites, but you can still get the familiarity and the understandability of the registered domain names.
Sure. Anybody have yeah.
So it's all well and good for a room like this, people like us, to understand how this technology works. Just more needs to be done in your mind for anonymous browsing or whatever to become more accessible to people. Is there a public concern here? Is the average person not actually being served adequately by this technology that's out there? Like, it's difficult, I think, to understand and actually use compared to the broader things. Like, everyone downloads Google Chrome, for example, but maybe that's not what they should do.
Well, I mean,
so the question is.
Oh, I'm sorry. So he just said this is hard for the ordinary person. It's all well and good for us, this room of some sorts of experts. We all are. I don't know. What about like the regular guy? Isn't this kind of hard? And what could be done to get them to understand this? So I'd say two things. One, in terms of how hard it is, it's not hard at all. I mean, this is just like a drag and drop, click, download, drag and drop, and it runs on your computer. Like, whatever. It's like apples. They just work except when they don't. But I mean, it's actually very easy. Now, in terms of getting the word out and getting people to understand, more could be done. I'm not the marketing sort of person. I'm the I do research. I think the more people understand, there's been a lot of misinformation about these things. Sometimes just accidental because that's makes good copy to talk about scary things. Sometimes I think that's intentional because there are some places where people don't want you using this because it undermines their intent, but because they don't want everybody to be secure. Places that do things, it's not just Tor, they will do clever things like just degrade the performance on encrypted connections, which means everybody will use unencrypted connections because people are impatient, and then they can watch everything. So I think there's just that sorts of things happen. But I think, yeah, I mean, sure, get the word out, please do. Everybody should be using this.
Yeah, well, I just have a quick question. So if you had a Facebook and the Onion version of Facebook, are they exact mirrors? So in other words, if you're posting something on Onion, would you only see it on Facebook Onion, or would you also see it on Facebook?
Okay, I don't speak for Facebook in any way. I mean, I did this work for the Navy, but just to be clear also, I do not speak for the Navy or even the Naval Research Laboratory. I'm just talking about my research that I do there. But as I understand it, I mean, this is just the way you access it, right? So the servers in the back are the same. So if you, I don't know, but as far as I know, they don't have any sort of special different thing.
Yeah, they don't run on an Onion server. They get to the place through an Onion server.
Right. The Onion routing part of this is sort of how you get back and forth and how you secure it. It's not the servers at the back end. So I mean, Facebook could do something special for their Onion services, sure. But as far as I don't know of that.
It's curious, anybody here running an Onion server?
Running a Tor relay? Yeah, Andrew. Former executive director of the Tor project over here.
Excellent. All right, great.
How about endpoint credentialing, credential pass-through through Tor, HSPD 12 or other security?
Despite being supposedly an expert, I have no idea what you just said. I'm not ashamed to
admit. The issue of
it.
endpoint credentialing, in other words, who one person on the computer, and they tell one time who would identify as being an actual computer.
Still on file.
Yeah. Well, you just say DigiCert was pushing to certify the Onion.
DigiCert offers ordinary credentials. You can go, Facebook has a certificate. It's a regular certificate. The .onion address is listed as an alt name, if you know about certificates. So I mean, you can just get a certificate. Now, for various reasons, the C8 browser forum does not currently allow DV certificates. If I had more time, I'd address, I think that's sort of a mistake, and I think there's answers to all the concerns they have, and they should be allowing DV certs, which would be things anybody could get, and I'm hoping that will happen in the future.
So I saw that the Facebook Onion site wasn't just plain Facebook.onion, it had a little
right, so actually, the .onion addresses are usually, as I said, it's the hash of the public key that goes to the site. So usually it's like, .onion, right? It's this weird thing. Facebook did something which most people will not be able to do. People do this on a baby level. They did it on a big level. They took the initial string Facebook, and then they generated a crap ton of keys over and over again until they got ones that hashed out to something that looked pretty readable, which was Facebook core www.i.onion. Now, most of the time, you're not going to have something like that. It's going to be just this random-looking string. And even though it's self-authenticating, there are people that set up like doppelganger onion sites because, if you change a Q to an R somewhere in the middle, maybe nobody's going to notice, which is why it's good to have this all bind to ordinary registered domain names, because then it will still, you will know that it's going to Facebook.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask. Do you see in the future a lot of individuals spoofing the Google signing page, Onion, the Google Onion site, and then some people go onto the Google Onion site and put in their credentials thinking they're going to sign in, but it's just a middleman?
No, they can't do that because, I mean, if it's got a certificate, they would have to, nothing's impossible in security. Anytime somebody says, oh, that's not possible, they're lying, right? I mean, it's always possible, but at what level? So somebody to do that would have to, they would have to bypass all they would have to spoof, come up with a duplicate of this hash of the public key. So they would have to find a colliding onion address. So they would have to basically supplant all the stuff I did. And then on top of that, they would have to spoof the certificate. Now, especially if it's an extended validation certificate, that's unlikely. So you would have to be basically beating all the stuff that's out there now in the certificate authorities, plus you would have to beat the .onion stuff simultaneously. So that's a fairly high bar.
Interesting. Okay. I'm always amazed by when you start, and Gordon was talking here, you're talking about some of the numbers and so on, that we're talking about these vast amounts of data flying around. The Chinese hackers getting 23 million addresses and so on. But you need a whole infrastructure just to handle the stuff that you're trying to steal from the world. With that question that came up before, how is this just stock market numbers, is an interesting question, because we have this insanely and interestingly and wonderfully complex world of security levels and things that are hashed and so on. But humans are out there trying to be bad guys in it. The humans have simpler ideas than people. I think we have to abstract, we have to change the resolution of all this to a place where it's human manageable. And that's a little bit of discussion of what do we tell the world about this. We kind of get it here in this beautiful conference room with these smart people, but how does my grandma know not to get her off online? And how do kids in school get trained in things? That's a bit part of my discussions about this. So it's an interesting thing. And to that point, while I got you up here, you had that great slide before the familiar iceberg. And we have the surface web and the deep web and the dark net, or dark web. What are our definitions in this area for the surface web? Is obviously I come into the world, I can sit at a Starbucks, I clickety-click, and I'm online. The deep web is the data that's behind firewalls, that's in databases connected to the web. How do we think of that? And,
Well, people, I mean, partly somebody who works on these technologies and stuff, people just throw these terms around. Like I said, I want to know what are you actually, doing here. When back in the 90s during the early crypto wars, the encryption technology was export control in the United States, but authentication technology wasn't. And I remember when I first looked at that, I said, I don't understand, what's the difference? And then Ron Levesque wrote this system, chafing and winnowing, where you could just send a bunch of random bits and then authenticate the bits that you wanted to be the message. And then you can, so just like show, demonstrated that was the case. So, I mean, what you want to call these things, I don't really care. The way people usually use it is like the surface web is the things you can get to with like Google and Bing, and the deep web is like databases and things like that that are not, having direct URLs in there. And then the dark web, I don't know, that means anything bad that happens on the internet. Sometimes that's the dark web. Sometimes it's Tor in general. Sometimes it's Tor onion services. Sometimes it includes other things like IPP. So I mean, people use it to mean a lot of things. I think I try to avoid the term because I just think it's misleading.
You mentioned that you estimated the size of the onion space or the dark web. Do you have a paper that's come out on how you did that, and do you?
There's a couple of white papers. I didn't actually do that work personally, but I know the people who did. So there's first of all, the numbers are available at that Tormetrics portal. So that's where those graphs came from. I believe there's a couple of white papers which were written about a year ago, and they're also on the Tor site somewhere. I mean, I can't remember now. I think it might be that if you look at these for these graphs, there might be a link to them there. But about how the statistics gathering was done. Actually, initially when we were first rolling it out, we only had a small fraction of the Tor sites reporting on the Tor relays, reporting on what was going through, and now it's a much higher fraction. So we have a little bit more trust in those numbers. But
so my question is more socio-political, I imagine a lot of people ask you quite frequently, what responsibility do you feel for the things that are misuses of the network and things like that? And in fact, I, as well as a lot of my colleagues, did ask, how can you justify producing this technology that may enable bad behavior as well as good behavior? And I was just wondering, is there an answer that you usually give, or how do you, answer this question?
Well, A couple of answers. One is that I think, I don't care if you're developing technology or you're cleaning toilets or whatever, you should think about, you know, the responsibility and the implications of everything you do. Now with technology, I've looked at the history of this quite a bit, and everything, books, when books first came out, the authorities were very upset about the way it was undermining things in many respects. During the first 100 years of the printing press, the diversity of editions, you would think that like the printing press breeds uniformity, the diversity of editions of the Vulgate Bible actually went hugely up rather than down. So there's all kinds of funny things. If you look at one of the Socratic dialogues, he's very upset about this new writing thing because he thinks it's like messing with people's minds. VCRs. In the mid-1970s, more than half of all pre-recorded videotape for sale was pornography. In the future, by the time you get